HoustonR's Garage. In this video, I'll be working on the XRAY GTXE 23 edition, bag 5. So let's get started. So bag 5 is the front suspension. So we're going to need the chassis, the front transmission, and bag 5 itself. So for now, we can set the chassis aside. Be careful when you open the bag because there are some small parts in the big bag, and then you're going to open up the other bag with the hardware, and be careful with that because there are some small set screws in there. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to assemble the front end with the control arms. So I'm going to go ahead and sand down some of these nubs where these parts came off the parts tree. Alright, so the control arms look like they could be used on either side. So they're bi-directional. So we can go ahead and set that right there. We're going to need the FR and the FF blocks, and the logos, the X-ray logos are going to be facing outside so you can actually see them. We're going to need the hinge pins. We're gonna need the pills, and the pill that we're gonna use is the one with the center circle. And that's gonna be on each corner. And then we're also going to need 2 M4x10 set screws. We're gonna need two 2mm shims that are gonna be 4x10x2, which are gonna be on this little parts tree. You wanna trim that, make sure there's no sharp edges that can get caught on anything. So before we assemble this together, I'm gonna go ahead and polish the hinge pins, as I like to do, with some Neverdull. Basically gonna go ahead and check up the hinge pin lightly in a drill. And then as I rotate the hinge pin, I'm just gonna work this Neverdull back and forth to polish the hinge pin. And that feels a lot smoother than this one that hasn't been polished. Just gonna wipe them down with a dry microfiber towel to make sure none of the fibers from the Neverdull are stuck on there. And now what we can do is we can install the downstop screws. So the downstop screws need to have 5mm between the edge of the screw and this edge on the bottom of the control arm. And grab my digital calipers. Right at 5mm. So I can go ahead and do the other side. Right at 5mm. Now we can go ahead and assemble this. And what we're going to do is we're going to install all the pills, and since it's a center dot, it doesn't matter which orientation you install it since the hole is in the center. So FR is in the rear, FF is in the front, just like so. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and from the front, we're going to go ahead and install the hinge pins. And the initial setting for the wheelbase is to have the 2mm shims on the front side, so they'll be on the FF side, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and install the control arms, and the control arms of this side is the front. So it'll install like so. And then lastly, we'll install the FR block like so. So now this assembly is ready to install onto the chassis. So to install it onto the chassis, we're going to need the chassis itself, and we're going to need 3 M4x10 flathead screws, and it's going to install in these holes here. So this front one and these 2 rear ones. So with the downstop screws, when you push down, you'll see that the control arms will actually kick up. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some Loctite onto these screws since they are going into metal. So since now that is on, we can install the front transmission, and we're going to install the front transmission in these 6 holes here. And the orientation of this, you have your out drive, it's going to be facing the rear of the car, and this will sit down just like that. And again, we're going to need the M4x10mm screws, the flatheads, and we're going to need 6 of them this time. And we're going to go ahead and add thread locker. Everything is shouldered up, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten everything in kind of a crisscross pattern. I'm going to start from the center and work my way out. And lastly, just going to go ahead and wipe down the bottom just in case there's any excess thread locker. All right. So with that done, we can set the chassis aside for now, and we can prepare the end links for the anti-roll bar and the anti-roll bar itself to install onto here. So we're going to need 4 of these rod ends. We're going to need the 2mm spacer off these parts trees, which is the one in the center. We're going to need 2 M3x12 set screws, and we're going to need the balls for the rod ends. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the set screw into one of the rod ends, and we're going to leave 6mm exposed. Right at 6mm. So next we can go ahead and install the 2mm shim, making sure there's no sharp edges from when it came off the parts tree. And lastly, we can go ahead and install the other rod end. Now we can go ahead and install there's some sharp edges on the rod ends, and don't want anything to get caught on that, so I'm gonna go ahead and sand those down. All right, now we can install the balls. So go ahead and use your shock pliers and install the balls onto the rod ends. You're going to use one with the collar on there, and the other one is just going to be a normal ball. Okay, so this one's ready. We can go ahead and assemble the next one. With these ready, we can set these aside and prepare the sway bar. So we're going to need the cups, the collars, the set screws, and lastly we're going to need two 5 by 8 by 2.5 bearings, which are the smallest bearings, and you should have 2 left of those. So first we're going to trim the excess material off these plastic cups. So we're going to go ahead and install the bearings in the cups. And I'm going to put some blue Loctite on the set screws for these collars. And I'm just going to go ahead and put the screw in. I'm not going to tighten it down or anything like that, just get it started. You don't need a lot of thread locker on here, just a little bit should be enough. So the way this is going to install is you're going to have the large portion of this collar going towards the center, and you want to make sure that you use the cutout in you want to use a cutout here in this collar to go around the bend, just like so. So we're going to have both of them installed, and then you're going to install the bearing and plastic cup with the plastic cup facing outside. Now this is now ready to install onto the chassis, so we can grab that. So the way this is going to install is in here, and you're going to push the bearings and plastic cups outward. And what I like to do here is I'm going to go ahead and lightly tighten down on these set screws. To help kind of hold them in place, and then slowly adjust them outward. So with these collars pushed all the way to the outside, there's not going to be, there'll be some play, and you want to try to center the roll bar before tightening down the set screws. And there we go. And everything moves nice and free. That's exactly what we want. Now we can install the end links into these slots here and here with the M3x18 screws. The set screws are already installed in here, so you can go ahead and we're going to remove them, add some thread locker on here because we don't want these to back out. I'm just going to start the threads, and the way that we want to install this is to have the collar facing towards the inside. So I installed the bottom screw here into the control arm, and it'll be probably easier to push up on the control arm so you have better access. And you're going into plastic, so you don't need to crank down on it too hard. Once it's shouldered up, it's good. And the setting for the sway bar is to be between, looks like 2 to 0 millimeters from the end. So I'm just gonna make it flush with the collar. I can go ahead and do this side. And everything moves nice and smooth. So that concludes bag 5. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Please stay tuned for the next video where I tackle bag 6, which is the continuation of the front suspension. Thanks, and I'll see you all in the next one.